A millionaire gave $200 to a homeless woman. But the next day, he saw her kneeling at his wife's grave. Daniel Morgan had lost his wife 23 years ago, and with her, the joy in his life. Every week, he visited her grave in silence until one rainy afternoon, he saw a young homeless woman holding a baby, soaked and shivering. Moved by instinct, Daniel handed her $200. But the next day, something shocking happened. That same woman was kneeling at his wife's grave, tears in her eyes. Who was she? What was her connection to Sarah, the love of his life? What Daniel discovered next would tear open decades of secrets and lead to a truth he never expected. Watch until the end. You won't believe how this story unfolds. Daniel Morgan was the kind of man people read about in magazines. A self-made billionaire from Charleston, South Carolina, Daniel owned a chain of real estate companies, luxury cars, and penthouses in New York and Miami. He had everything except peace, because for the past 23 years, Daniel lived with a wound no money could heal. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, rain or shine, Daniel visited Greenwood Cemetery. There, among the whispering oaks and wind-worn gravestones, rested Sarah Morgan, his late wife, his one and only love. Sarah wasn't just beautiful. She radiated warmth. She had the kind of smile that could stop a storm, and the kind of laugh that made strangers smile back. Where Daniel was reason and strategy, Sarah was heart and soul. She lit up his life until an unexpected illness stole her away. Despite Daniel's fortune, doctors had told him there was nothing they could do. He held Sarah's hand until the very end, watching the light fade from her eyes, and when she was gone, something inside Daniel went with her. From that day forward, Daniel became a shadow. He went through the motions, signing contracts, attending board meetings, but his soul was locked in the past. The grand house, where they once danced and dreamed, was now a mausoleum of memories. The fireplace never burned, the piano never played, and the silence was deafening. Daniel's only ritual, the only thing that made him feel remotely alive, was visiting her grave. He'd sit there for hours, sometimes whispering memories, sometimes just staring at her name etched in stone. Sarah Grace Morgan, beloved wife, forever missed. That's when it happened. One chilly Tuesday afternoon, with rain gently falling and thunder grumbling in the distance, Daniel left his Bentley parked by the cemetery gates and walked down the familiar stone path. Umbrella in hand, he barely noticed the world around him anymore. But then he stopped. Across the street from the cemetery entrance, near a rundown building with flickering neon signs, sat a young woman huddled under the narrow awning of Main Street Deli. She clutched a tiny bundle in her arms, a baby. Her hair was soaked, and her thin coat clung to her skin. She looked exhausted, lost and cold. Daniel's feet moved before his mind could catch up. He approached slowly, the rain tapping against his umbrella like a metronome. "Are you okay?" he asked. The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes, dark, sunken, tired, met his. She hesitated, then nodded weakly. "I'm just waiting for the rain to pass." Daniel glanced at the infant in her arms. The baby's face peeked out from a tattered blanket, peacefully asleep despite the weather. Something twisted in Daniel's chest. "You shouldn't be out here," he said. "Do you need anything? Food? Formula?" The young woman hesitated, then whispered, "We haven't eaten since yesterday." Without thinking, Daniel reached into his wallet and handed her a wad of cash, 3 crisp $200 bills. "Here," he said, "get something warm to eat and dry clothes." She stared at the money like it was a foreign object. Slowly she took it, her hands trembling. "Thank you," she murmured. Daniel nodded awkwardly. He wanted to ask her name, to understand why she was out here in the cold with a baby, but something in her eyes stopped him. Pain, a story too big for a sidewalk conversation. He turned to leave, but paused. "What's your name?" "Lena," she replied quietly. "Lena Carter. Nice to meet you, Lena. I'm Daniel." And then he walked away. But that night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The image of Lena and the baby haunted him, her hollow eyes, her soaked hair, the way she held that child like he was her whole world. Something about her felt familiar. The next day, Daniel returned to Greenwood Cemetery. The clouds still loomed, and the wind carried the scent of wet earth and pine. He stepped through the gates, his heart heavy as usual, and made his way to Sarah's grave. And there she was, kneeling in front of Sarah's tombstone, Lena, holding her baby, whispering to the grave. Daniel froze. His blood ran cold. Why was she here? How did she know Sarah? His breath caught in his throat as he slowly approached. Lena didn't notice him at first. She was lost in her thoughts, her lips moving in soft murmurs. The scene felt intimate. too intimate. Finally, Daniel spoke. "What are you doing here?" Lena turned, startled. Her eyes widened when she recognized him. Tears welled up. "I didn't mean to intrude," she whispered. I needed to come." Daniel's voice was firm now. "Why? Did you know my wife?" She looked down at the baby in her arms, then back at him. Her lips trembled. And then she said the words that shattered Daniel's world. "Sarah was my mother." "Wait a second. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this." Daniel stood frozen, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the rain. "What did you just say?" he asked again, his voice low and sharp. Lena swallowed hard, her eyes not leaving his. "Sarah Morgan was my mother." Daniel took a step back as if the weight of her words had pushed him. He shook his head slowly. "That's not possible," he said, barely above a whisper. "Sarah, she never had children. We never had children." "I know," Lena replied gently. "I only found out a few weeks ago myself." Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. Was this some twisted scam? A coincidence? But her eyes, they held no malice, only pain. The same kind of pain he saw in the mirror every day for the last 23 years. Lena clutched her baby closer to her chest as she continued, her voice trembling. "I was adopted. I grew up in Arizona. My adoptive parents were kind, but I always knew I didn't quite belong. They told me early on that I was adopted, but they didn't know who my birth mother was." She paused to take a breath, and Daniel remained silent, his thoughts tangled like barbed wire. "A few weeks ago," she said, "I was going through some of my old belongings and found a letter. It had my birth mother's name on it, Sarah Grace Williams." Daniel's heart skipped. Williams was Sarah's maiden name. I started digging. I tracked down records, old photos, and then I found her obituary. It led me here. Daniel's world spun. He remembered every conversation with Sarah, her smiles, her secrets, the moments they shared. Had she truly kept something this monumental from him? A child? He looked at Lena again, his chest tightening. "I don't understand," Daniel muttered. "We talked about kids. She always said the timing wasn't right, or that we weren't ready, but she never told me." Lena nodded solemnly. "Maybe she was afraid. Maybe it was before you two met." Daniel's eyes flickered. "How old are you?" 23, she said. 23, the year Sarah died. A wave of realization hit him like a freight train. "She was pregnant before we got married," he whispered. "And she never told me." The rain thickened, matching the storm in his chest. Lena stood slowly, still holding her son. "I didn't come to cause trouble," she said softly. I needed to see her grave, to feel something. I grew up not knowing who I was, and now that I do, it's overwhelming." Daniel's hands trembled. He stared at Sarah's tombstone, the engraved letters suddenly foreign. The woman he'd worshipped, mourned, and visited every week had hidden a daughter. His wife had taken a secret to the grave, a secret that was now staring him in the face. A baby cried. Lena bounced gently, whispering comfort to the child. "What's his name?" Daniel asked, his voice hollow. "Lucas," she replied. "Lucas?" Daniel glanced at the tiny boy, his pale lashes fluttering as he settled back to sleep. He was so small, so fragile. "So that makes me—" Daniel stopped himself. He couldn't say it. "A grandfather," Lena finished for him. Her eyes shimmered with tears. If that's something you want." Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't. He just walked away, the rain soaking through his coat, the cemetery blurring around him. That night, Daniel didn't eat, didn't sleep. He sat in his study with the lights off, the fireplace cold, and Sarah's photo on the mantel staring back at him. His mind was a battlefield of memory and betrayal. Had she ever tried to tell him? Was she ashamed? Was she protecting him? Or hiding from herself? Daniel opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a leather box. Inside were letters, old ones Sarah had written to him over the years. Love notes, grocery lists, anniversary cards. He read through them one by one, looking for a clue. Anything. But they were all full of love, empty of truth. The next morning, Daniel drove to the records office. He requested birth records, adoption papers, anything that might tie Sarah Williams to Lena Carter. And then he found it. A single sheet of aged paper. A birth certificate from a hospital in Nashville dated 23 years ago. Mother, Sarah Williams. Father, unknown. Daughter, Lena. Daniel sank into the chair, gripping the paper like it was on fire. It was real. All of it. His wife had a daughter before they married, and that daughter was now standing in front of his life, alive, hurting, and alone. 3 days later, Daniel returned to the cemetery. Lena was there again. This time, she looked up as he approached. "Why didn't she tell me?" Daniel asked, the pain raw in his voice. Lena shook her head. "I don't know." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't cold like before. It was thoughtful, heavy. "She loved deeply," Daniel said quietly, almost to himself. "Maybe she thought she was protecting me, or herself." He turned toward Lena. "I don't know what kind of relationship you're looking for, or what you expect from me, but I want to learn. About you, about him." He glanced at Lucas, who was now cooing in her arms. Lena blinked back tears. "I'd like that." Daniel nodded. For the first time in decades, he felt a shift inside, a crack in the grief that had bound him. Maybe this wasn't just the end of a chapter. Maybe, somehow, it was a beginning. If you were in Daniel's shoes, would you open your heart to Lena and baby Lucas, or would the betrayal be too much to forgive? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Type family if you believe in second chances. The following week, Daniel couldn't get Lena or little Lucas off his mind. He'd spent so many years lost in the shadows of grief that the sudden appearance of a daughter and grandson had cracked his world wide open. At first, it felt like a betrayal. Now, it felt like a question he had to answer. Who was Sarah, really? The woman he'd loved so fiercely? How could she have kept something so life-changing from him? One rainy afternoon, Daniel climbed into the attic for the first time in years. Dust clung to every corner, and boxes sat untouched since Sarah's passing. He rummaged through old photo albums, dried flowers and letters, until he spotted a small floral-patterned suitcase tucked beneath a dusty tarp. It was hers. Daniel unlatched the suitcase slowly. Inside were several notebooks tied with a ribbon, photographs from before their marriage, and a sealed envelope with his name on it. His hands trembled. The handwriting was unmistakably Sarah's. He tore it open and began to read. "If you're reading this, then somehow the truth found its way to you. I never meant to lie. I never meant to hurt you, but I was scared. So scared. Before you and I ever met, I was young and in love with someone who wasn't ready to be a father. When I got pregnant, he disappeared. I was heartbroken, ashamed, and lost. I gave our baby up for adoption, believing it was the best choice. Then, you came into my life. You saved me in ways you never knew. I wanted so badly to tell you about her, but I was terrified that it would change the way you looked at me, at us. Every time I tried, I convinced myself it wasn't the right moment. And eventually, I let time bury it. But not a day passed that I didn't think about her. Please, Daniel, if she ever finds you, don't turn her away. She's a part of me, and if you can love her, it will be like loving me all over again, with all my heart. Sarah." Tears blurred Daniel's vision. He clutched the letter to his chest, finally understanding. She hadn't told him out of shame or dishonesty. She'd done it out of fear and a deep, flawed love. She was human. And now Daniel had a second chance to make things right. The next morning, Daniel called Lena and invited her over. When she arrived, baby Lucas in her arms, she was hesitant. "You sure this is okay?" she asked. Daniel nodded, opening the door wider. "Come in." They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he and Sarah had shared morning coffees and late-night confessions. Lucas giggled on the floor, gnawing on a toy. "I found a letter," Daniel said, sliding it toward Lena. She opened it slowly, her hands shaking. As she read her mother's words, tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "I always wondered if she thought about me," she whispered. "She did," Daniel replied gently. "Every single day." There was silence for a moment, only the sound of Lucas babbling to himself. "I don't know what this means," Lena said. "I didn't grow up with her. I didn't grow up with you. But I feel like I finally know where I came from." Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. "I can't make up for the years we lost," he said. "But I can be here now, for you, for him." Lena smiled through her tears. "I'd like that." Daniel glanced at Lucas, who crawled over and tugged on his pant leg. He lifted the boy into his lap and looked into his bright, curious eyes. Sarah had given him one last gift, a family he never knew he had. And now, he had a reason to live again. How did this part of the story make you feel? Do you believe Daniel should fully embrace Lena and Lucas as his family? If you feel touched by their journey so far, comment a 100% below and tell us why. 2 weeks had passed since Daniel and Lena began meeting regularly. What started as tense and uncertain conversations over coffee slowly transformed into warm, heartfelt afternoons. Lucas had taken a liking to Daniel almost instantly, calling him Pop in his bubbly toddler way, not yet knowing the meaning but feeling the bond. Daniel couldn't believe how much had changed in such a short time. He started doing things he hadn't done in decades, cooking meals, laughing over baby food disasters, even reading bedtime stories again. His world, once gray and heavy with sorrow, was now lit by new beginnings. But he still carried a final weight on his chest, the one man from the past he needed to confront. The name had resurfaced in his search for Lena's biological father, the man Sarah had once loved and lost before she ever met Daniel. With the help of an old friend, Daniel found Robert Kane's address in a quiet retirement neighborhood a few hours away. He didn't know what he expected, an apology, a denial, closure. He just knew he couldn't let Lena move forward without knowing her full truth. Robert opened the door with the same confusion Daniel had worn the first day he met Lena. "Daniel Morgan," Robert said, surprised. "It's been what, 30 years?" "At least," Daniel said. "Can I come in? It's about Sarah." That name. Robert's face froze. Inside, over tea and a silence too loud to bear, Daniel revealed everything: Sarah's letter, Lena's existence, and how she had grown up never knowing either parent. Robert sat there, stunned. "I had no idea," he finally said, his voice hollow. "Sarah never told me. We were young, stupid. When I left town, I never looked back. I didn't think—" He stopped, choking on emotion. "I didn't think I left anything behind." "Well," Daniel replied, "you did. Her name is Lena, and she has a little boy named Lucas." Robert nodded slowly, tears welling up. "Do they want anything from me?" "They don't expect anything. But maybe they deserve something. You can't undo the past, but you can show up now." Robert leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, he felt something stir inside: regret, guilt, and maybe hope. Lena was nervous when Daniel called and said Robert wanted to meet her. "I don't know if I can do it," she confessed. "You don't have to," Daniel said gently. "But if you're curious, if you want to hear from him, I'll be there with you." Lucas sat on her lap, tugging at her necklace. She looked into her son's eyes and made a decision, not just for herself, but for the future of the little boy who deserved to know where he came from. "I'll meet him," she said. They met at a local park under the early bloom of spring. The air smelled of grass and second chances. Robert arrived with a bouquet of wildflowers, awkwardly held and wrinkled from the drive. Lena stood with Lucas on her hip, unsure of what to expect. "I don't know what to say," Robert admitted. "I wish I could turn back time, but I can't. I can only say I'm sorry, and if you'll let me, I'd like to get to know you, both of you." Lena was quiet. Lucas reached for the flowers. She smiled faintly. "I don't know what comes next," she said, "but I'm willing to find out." They sat on the bench. Daniel watched from a distance, his heart full, his eyes misty. This wasn't a perfect ending. It was real, honest, and perhaps the beginning of something better. The Morgan household looked different now. The old silence had been replaced by laughter, toys on the floor, and spaghetti-stained bibs. Daniel had turned the guest room into a nursery for when Lena and Lucas visited, and they visited often. Robert came around too, slowly easing into the role of Grandpa Robert, learning how to make pancakes and push a swing. Daniel had learned something powerful, that love doesn't have to begin at the beginning. Sometimes it finds you in the middle, when you least expect it. One evening, Daniel stood in the doorway watching Lena read Lucas a bedtime story. The little boy clung to her words, and in that moment, Daniel felt Sarah's presence in the room, not as a ghost of sorrow, but as a whisper of peace. He stepped into the room and kissed Lucas on the forehead. "Good night, champ." Lucas grinned. "Night, Pop." As Lena pulled the blanket up, Daniel caught her hand. "Thank you," he whispered. She looked up, puzzled. "For what?" "For letting me be part of your world, for giving me a reason to smile again." Lena smiled. "I think Mom would have wanted this." Daniel nodded. "I think she'd be proud." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 generations connected by a woman they both loved, and by a bond stronger than blood, forgiveness, acceptance, and the courage to begin again. Did it stir something in your heart? If you believe in second chances and the power of love, drop a 200 in the comments and tell us what part touched you the most. Let's keep these heartfelt stories alive. Share this with someone who needs a little hope today.